In this video, I want to talk about classes and objects again and just go over the basics. So it's quite an advanced topic. So I'm just going to go over some of the basics with regard to classes and objects. As I was mentioning previously, for me, I envisage classes like the designs of a house and objects like the houses you build from that design. So you can see here on my blackboard that I have drawn up the design for a house, and it has a living room and 2 bedrooms and a kitchen and whatnot. And using that one design, I can build 2 houses, and I could build many houses. But here I just show that I've built 2 houses. And the houses are very, very similar because they're built from the same design. So they both have a kitchen, both have bedrooms in the same place. They'd both have a hall that would be the same width and same length, and so on and so forth. But they're also different. For example, this house here might be painted green, and this house here might be painted blue. This house might have nobody living in it, and this house might have 5 people living in it. This house might have the lights on. This house mightn't have the lights on. So while they have the same structure, the properties or the values of the properties of the houses are different. And classes and objects are very like that. So if I just move over here and let's have a look at this section of the board. And I've been just roughly drawing out what a car class might look like. So let's say, for argument's sake, that I want to model a car, a real world car. Well, in programming, in a language like Python, I would use a class to do that. And class is short for classification. And usually you use a class to model or represent a real world thing. And classes really are just a collection of functions and variables. So if I was to write a class in a language like Python, I might decide that the class would have a bunch of variables like color, the color of the car. I might decide that the car class would have a variable called color, owner, who owns it, the model of the car, the speed the car is going on, whether the brakes are on or not. So I might have these variables. But it might also have some functions, like a function to start the car, to stop the car, to change the speed, and you might pass in an amount by which you want to change the speed by, or maybe you want to the amount you want to set the speed to. You might have a function called engage brake, which is like press the brake, and you might have another function called disengage brake. And so collectively you'd say this piece of code that you've grouped together in a class, again, you might think of it like as a little mini program. It represents a car. You can use it to represent a car. But just like the design of a house, a class on its own isn't really much use. It's not until you create an object of the class that it becomes useful. So just like the design of the house, the design, you can't sleep in the design of a house. But if you build a house from the design, well, then you could sleep in the house that you built. And objects are similar. So how would I go about creating an object of the car class? Well, it's pretty the same in most programming languages, but in a language like Python, I'll just zoom in here a little bit. You can see here that I've created a car. I've created a variable called Sam's car, and I put it equal to, and the name of the class, and then open bracket, close bracket. So it's like, boom, just at that instant when I write that line of code, a car object is created, and it's stored in the variable Sam's car. Here in this line, I'm creating another car object, and I'm storing it in the variable Mary's car. So to create an object of a class, you just simply type in the name of the class and then followed by brackets. You can see here I've gone on to set some of the values of the variables in Mary's car. So you can see here, the minute I execute these 2 lines, or the computer executes these 2 lines, I'll end up with Sam's car object and Mary's car object. And again, structurally, they look very similar. They both have variables called color. They both have variables called owner and model and speed and break on. What I haven't shown here is they both have functions called start, stop, change speed, engage brake, and disengage brake. But the values of their variables can be different. So for example, in Mary's car, I could set the color to red by doing Mary's car dot the name of the variable, or sorry, the name of the variable, color, equals red. I could set the owner to Mary, Mary's car dot owner equals Mary, Mary's car dot model equals 4, Mary's car dot engage brake. Here I'm calling the engage brake function on Mary's car object. Then I go Mary's car dot change speed, and I might pass it in the number 25. This might have the effect of changing the speed variable on Mary's car to 25. Now, if you compare it with Sam's car also has variables the same as Mary with the same name, and also has the same functions, but the value of the variables are different. And that's the difference between different objects and objects and classes. So from a class, you create one or more objects, and then objects will differ because of the value of the variables that are within them. So now if I go back to my code here, I'm going to show you an example of how to create an object using a super Python module called Turtle. So before I do, I just want to go over this comment that we spoke about earlier. So again, this is just another example. Here's an example of what a piece of Python code might look like if I was to create a class to represent an oven. That is a cooking oven that you might find in a kitchen. So if I was to create a class to represent an oven, again, I'd use the keyword class, I'd give it a name, oven, and then I'd give it what variables I think it needed. So I've decided that ovens all should have a temperature variable. So I've created a temperature variable and put it equal to 0. Then I've created two functions, a turn on and a turn off function. And when you call the turn on function, you pass it in an argument, and that sets the temperature to whatever you pass it in. And then when you call the turn off function, you set the temperature to 0. So then down here is an example of me creating objects of that class and then calling functions on those objects. So here in line 24, I create an oven object and I store it in the variable first oven, and I create another oven object and I store it in the variable second oven. So from the one class, I've actually created two oven objects. Then on the first oven, I could call the turn on function and pass it in 50. This would mean temp here would become 50 on the first oven object. So the temperature value, because we set the temperature equal to temp, so the temperature variable on the first oven object will become 50. But in the second oven object, I call turn on, but I pass it in 100. So the temperature on the second oven will become 100. So we've got two objects, both made from the same class, both have a variable each called temperature, but the value of one of them is 50 and the value of the other is 100. Okay, so let's actually now go and create another object. So I'm going to create a turtle object. And this is typically how I would create it. So if I'm going to create an object, I'm going to store it in a variable called test, and I might do something like this. So there you go. I'm creating a turtle object, but I'm calling the name of the class, open bracket, close bracket. And that creates a turtle object, and I store it in the variable tests. However, that won't work just like that, because I have imported my turtle graphic, my turtle module. So at the start of my program, I say, please import the turtle module, because it's inside in that module. It's in there where the turtle class exists. So to create a turtle object, I have to precede the name of my class with the name of the module it's in. Now, I can show you later how we can avoid that, but for the time being, that's what I'm doing. So I'm creating a turtle object by naming the turtle class and with open bracket, close bracket afterwards. But I also have to precede that by the name of the module it's in. So now test is a variable that contains a turtle object. So now I can call the speed function, because I've read the documentation on the turtle class, and I know that it has a speed function, so I can call the speed function on this turtle object and pass it 1, which means I want my turtle to go slow. I can call the color function, which will set the color of my turtle to blue. I'm calling the shape function to set the shape of my turtle to turtle, and then I'm calling the forward and the right function, and I'm doing it repeatedly. So I'm telling my turtle object that I've stored in the variable test, I'm telling it to go forward 100 pixels and then to turn right 90 pixels, and I'm doing that 4 times. So my turtle should actually draw a square. It should go forward 100 pixels, turn right, go forward 100 pixels again, turn right, because as you move the turtle around the screen, every turtle has a pen. Every turtle object that you create has a pen that it sort of drags around it. So let's have a look at this in action. So I just noticed first that I'm in the Pygame 0 mode. I need to be in the Python 3 mode, and then I press run. You see the turtle gets created. It's blue, its shape is turtle, and it drew a square for me. So that's a very brief introduction to how to create an object and the difference between an object and a class, and then how to call functions on an object and pass those functions arguments.